Hi, and happy Tuesday. I'm Tracy Stuckrath, your host of the Eating at a Meeting podcast and founder of Thrive Meetings and Events. And it is day 2 of Food Allergy Awareness Week. And this is the look of somebody who took the red eye to get home to be on this conversation today with Ruth Holroyd. I'm so excited to chat with her. She is the author of Anaphylaxis, the Essential Guide and Action Plan for Living with Food Life-Threatening Allergies. And also the book, Shape of Skin, which is poems for people with eczema. She has been blogging and advocating for the food allergy and eczema community for 13 years. So hi, Ruth.
Hello. Thank you for having me on today.
You're welcome. And just if you can't tell from her accent, Ruth is from the UK. So she is, and I said yesterday, it's not just here in the United States that food allergies happen. It's all over the world. So we're going to talk about how she manages her allergies. So Ruth, tell us when did you find out you have allergies, or figured it out, I should say?
A long time ago. I'm 49 and I did not know. When I was growing up, I think it took my mum a while to work out what was happening. So I think I was born with allergies, but they weren't diagnosed until I was maybe 8 or 9. Okay. And I would have unexplained vomiting. But kids do that, don't they? So to start off with, you're like, oh, they just don't like the food, or they've just got food poisoning or a bug like kids do. So it took a while. And when I was diagnosed, we didn't have adrenaline. Allergies did exist, but pretty much the advice was, we think she's allergic to nuts, so don't eat them. That was it. And I also had a dairy allergy, which wasn't quite like the nut allergy, so I had chronic eczema. So although it was having an immediate effect on me, it wasn't an anaphylactic reaction. So that again wasn't diagnosed until I was probably in my 20s, when I worked out that I was allergic to dairy as well. And then I've collected them over the years. I've got loads of allergies now.
Wow. Hey, Marsha Archer, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here. Well, and you can grow in and out into allergies, and you can grow out of allergies. So, yeah. And I think here in the States, and I don't know if this is worldwide, but Dr. Ruchi Gupta says the number one adult onset allergy is shellfish.
Oh, wow.
And I actually had a coworker who ate shellfish his entire life. And then all of a sudden in his late 30s, he was anaphylactic to them. So
actually, that's interesting. My ex was diagnosed with a shellfish allergy in quite later in adult life. And he's pretty sure he'd eaten them. I don't think he ever liked them, but he'd eaten them before without problem. Right. So yeah, why does that happen as an adult?
I don't know. I mean, and it's kind of like, celiac disease too, whereas it could be dormant in your body your whole life. And then you fall down and hit your head, and all of a sudden it's reactive. So how do you manage multiple food allergies? And I know I want to talk about the action plan, because I think it's really important. Yesterday we talked with Kristen Osborne. I talked to her about from diagnosis to real life, and how her son's doctor called and said, oh, your son's allergic to wheat, milk, and egg, and hung up the phone and have a nice life. Right?
Yeah,
that's crazy. So how do you manage that?
It's really hard, and I am actually shocked, although I shouldn't be shocked. I am shocked, but then I'm not shocked that is still what's being told to people. Like, that happened to me 40 years ago when I was a kid, and that's still the same. It's a bit shocking that we haven't learned, because there are now guidelines in the UK. We call them the NICE guidelines, National Institute of Clinical Excellence, and they say if a patient comes in to the surgery with these questions, that complaint, then you should send them down a pathway. And I'm sure it's the same in most countries. There should be triggers where they start pointing us in the right direction, but that it doesn't happen here, and it's terrible. It's really awful, because people die because they don't get pointed in the right direction.
Exactly.
So where do I start? What to do with an action plan? I think that's why I'm doing my blog, because there is this massive gap between being diagnosed and then having to go and live with it. And I started writing it for myself as like a diary of things I'd learned, and it's just grown and grown over the years. And there's a lot of people that need that like, what do I do now day to day? It's a bit of a minefield.
It is. And there's so many different terms for the different allergens. And so because manufacturers can use just the whey from milk, right? Or the casein, or they're using the lactose. And that's why, and the difference between lactose intolerance and food allergy is very different. But even wheat, you can use buckwheat is gluten-free, but it still has the word wheat in it. And which is confusing, right?
Very confusing, because coconut is not a nut.
Right.
And most people can eat coconuts who have a nut allergy, although some people are also allergic to coconut.
Right.
And peanuts are not a nut. Make that make sense.
Right. They're a legume. And and if you look at vegetables, vegetable oil in the grocery store, it's made with soy oil, and soy is not a vegetable. Soy is a legume. So there's a lot of, and even the egg and the milk, right? A lot of people say that, and this is the one I hear all the time, that mayonnaise contains dairy. I'm like, no, mayonnaise doesn't contain dairy. It's got eggs in it. Just because the eggs are in the dairy section of the grocery store doesn't mean that it's dairy.
But we have that in England, and I don't know where that comes from, that assumption that egg and milk are dairy, because dairy is from cows. You don't see chickens. I mean, chickens lay eggs. Cows don't lay eggs. No. I don't know where that has come from, but we have the same in England. I don't know if it's how it's marketed. Like bread, milk, eggs are like those basic groceries that you buy, and people do tend to think they're very simple.
Exactly. And I think it's because it's in that same vicinity in the grocery store. So when we got on, just before we got on, we were talking about how you were just, you gave a presentation to about 60 people the other day. Can you talk about who was in the audience and what you were talking about, and then what their take of it was?
Okay. So there was about 60 people there, maybe more, and they were all from different backgrounds. Some had a little burger kiosks, up to people who were running hotels with catering facilities and restaurants. And it was fantastic to see them. They were really, really lapping up all the information, and it was about food safety. So there was a bit about food poisoning, and that was really interesting. I learned loads of things I didn't know about food poisoning. It's like, oh, I've been doing that wrong. And then part of it was about food allergies, and that was that I was invited to speak as a patient about what it's like dining, how scary that is, the things that we do to keep ourselves safe. And they were really fascinated, and they said it was a real eye-opener for them. Like they hadn't really put themselves in the shoes of the person with allergies. And I know it's really hard, and kitchens are really busy. And yes, it's a busy, frantic place where anything can go wrong. Mistakes happen. Like I know, and we all appreciate that. And I think what they took away from it was a couple of things that I had been trying to get through to them is in communication is so key. And I'm sure we'll talk about that later. But engaging with the customer is so important, because we're all different. You need to find out what our problem is. Like, people will say they have an allergy when they might be celiac, because people don't know what celiac disease is. So they'll just say, I have a wheat allergy. And that might be a problem because they're also allergic to barley and rye. And does the restaurant understand that? And they might have a mild allergy, or they might have an intolerance, or they might just not like it. And it's really important to understand that for when you're in the kitchen, like how much care you need to take. The other thing I'm going to mention, I'm not sure if we're meant to plug names, but I mentioned that I carry this.
Kyle's going to be on the show on Saturday
later. So he's just launched in the UK, and I'm an ambassador for them. And I find this really helps. Restaurants are like, that's really helpful. They can take it away. They can pin it with my order. The staff can read it, because they don't always understand or listen properly. And that's part of the problem with communication. And one thing they all said was, oh, we haven't seen one of those. That's brilliant. I would love it if people came in with that, because it is really difficult to communicate. You get that Chinese whispers, don't you? What the customer says and what actually gets through to the kitchen.
Exactly. It's really scary. And then I'm going to duck down real quick. These other ones that I use at events.
Yeah.
So that you can hand it to your server to identify yourself, because those cards, I love those cards. And but it's also, if you've got 15 food functions and you've got 75 servers, it's like, let's do this, right?
Yeah.
So it's a combination, but it's a communication tool.
Yeah, it starts the engagement because people don't engage enough. And one thing that the trading standards who were running this, it was run by the council and the trading standards team who work there, was how important it is to have that communication. And they were trying to say, everyone, you should ask everyone who has allergy here. And that has started to happen, because one of the problems here is with young adults is they don't even tell you. Right. There are people that too shy, they're too embarrassed, they don't want anyone to know. Right. But if you make it like does anyone got any allergies? Just a normal question, not problem, no eye rolling, no, which we get a lot.
We get a lot. And even like I went to lunch the other day or dinner the other night, and I'm like, okay, so I want this. And it was guacamole. And he's like, you can't have, and I may have mentioned this yesterday. He's like, you can't have the guacamole. It's got gluten in it. I'm like, what in guacamole has gluten?
Why?
Right. And it was, I still don't even know. It was some sauce that they put on top of it. And I'm like, okay. But it was, what I also got annoyed by was that he really wasn't forthcoming with, well, you can eat this and you can eat this. Here's some good suggestions. Right.
Yeah.
And that's where he just leaves you to read the menu and decipher, and it leaves you hungry and hangry.
And when you get that, and I kind of love them and hate them, but when you get that, we have here in England, I'm sure you have them in America, the Bible, I call it, where they have every item. It happens more in the chain restaurants like Pizza Express, McDonald's and things like that, where they make it the same every way, and they have a big grid. And you have to try and look along this grid to see what's ticked and what's not. And sometimes it means safe. Like if it says GF, it means it's okay for gluten-free. And sometimes it's ticked because it's not. And it's very confusing. You have to try and no one does it the same way. And you have to try and fathom which language this is being written in.
Well, and because when I talk about the EU 1169 here to planners in the States who are doing events in the UK or in Europe, I'm like, the EU allowed every country to design their regulations around it differently.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, have fun with that, meeting planner, right?
Yeah. And we have
I know
14, so you have 8 and we have 14 allergens.
We actually have 9 now.
You have 9. Oh, okay.
So we added sesame
last
year.
About that.
Yes. So and it's hidden in a lot of things, especially hummus, but or in breads, right? Bread. Which we know from Natalie, and her allergic reaction to the sandwich. But we added sesame last year. So just for everybody to know, the top 9 allergies in the US are wheat, egg, soy, tree nuts, peanuts, fish, shellfish, milk, and sesame. Did I get them all? Yeah. And then what are the other ones that Europe that EU
on the spot? We have celery, mustard. So if you have 9, we have celery, mustard, and then we have 4 more sulfites, which are in a lot of things. Did you have mollusks?
We do ours as shellfish, meaning crustaceans.
Yeah.
So I know you separate
them out to fish, crustaceans, and mollusks. There's one more. Might be
lupin. Yep.
Which is really big in Europe, but we don't have it much in England at all. But it comes in it's a flower. It's a beautiful flower, and they make it into flour, and it's a flower as in blooming, and they make it into flour for baking, and it's really quite a versatile flour, but it reacts with peanuts quite badly. So people who with peanut allergy will possibly react to lupin.
Well, and then the other one too is that you say cereals with gluten. You don't say wheat. We say wheat. So, and gluten's a whole nother labeling thing here in the US. It's a separate labeling.
Yeah, well, that's for the celiacs because they are allergic to wheat and also rye and barley. So celiac disease, I think it's for the celiac. So not just wheat, but other cereals.
Yeah. Okay, so when you go out, or when you're going to an event, you're going out to dinner, what is your process or your action plan to make sure that you're safe?
It's really hard. I'm usually the planner. If I'm not the planner, usually people are like, oh, if Ruth's coming, can you I have to book it. It's a bit of a pain sometimes because you don't always want to be doing the booking, but it's a military operation. I would ideally phone somewhere 2 weeks before and have a conversation. That's not always easy, and it's not always helpful, because quite often they'll just say, yeah, we're fine on the phone, and it's easier. It's better for me if I can speak to someone that really will have a dialogue with me about the menu, but I can't always do that. Or speak to the chef, which is the gold thing, but you can't always get hold of the chefs because they're so busy. So phone ahead. I email as well if I can, and just list my allergies, because I have multiple. Have been described as every chef's worst nightmare before, because I'm allergic to wheat, dairy, soya, and nuts. So then when I get there, I will tell them again, and I will just keep telling them, and it probably drives them mad. I take my card here. I always carry my adrenaline. I wear a bracelet, which is a medical alert bracelet to alert people. And I kind of do those for myself. They're less helpful for the restaurant, but I'm like putting on my armor and I'm getting ready for it mentally as well as kind of planning wise. And it is really scary putting my trust in places like that, because I make mistakes myself. So I know we're all humans. I know one day it's like, when is the next mistake going to happen? So I'm just really, really careful, and I will choose an early booking. I'll go early when it's quiet, and I'll choose something really simple. Quite often, if I've never been somewhere before, or if I don't know them, I'll be just ordering something really, really simple, and I'll ask the chef. One thing that works really well is to ask the chef what he would like to cook you. What would be the safest thing and the best thing. Wow.
That's a good idea. And I there's a story that I told recently, and it was from years ago, but I went to an author dinner, and it was an 8-course meal, and I really, really wanted to go. And I reached out in advance, and I gave the chef this is I can't have list, but this is my can have list. And Chef Jason, posted it all over the kitchen, and he made me an 8-course meal with everybody else. But he's like, I really loved the can have. I mean, he needs the can't, but he really loves the can because it opens up their mind.
Yeah.
And opens up their creativity of what they can create.
And it also helps because sometimes a couple of chefs have said this to me, it's actually really helpful. They'll do something totally different. So for everybody there, the chefs, the servers, and all of the staff, they know that's your meal because you're the person with allergies and it's not quite the same as everyone else's. So they can tweak it and make it really nice for you, because quite often, let's face it, we just get things taken off, don't we? You can't have that, you can't have that. Like I had a meal recently where I just had steak on a plate because there was no carbohydrate option. We couldn't do chips because of cross-contamination. There was no rice, there was no potatoes. Everything was kind of boiled in a bag and came ready-made. It was a bit sad. No salad. I was like, can you not do a salad? No.
Really? Not even a bag salad?
No, it was like it's all dressed. And you're like, oh dear, this is really quite.
Or it's got the croutons in it, right? And and that's an allergy in and of itself. And you can't just take the croutons off.
Not when you can't. Not safe.
No.
Well, that has happened to me.
And so you started blogging for yourself, and then you've turned this into this book, right?
Yeah.
And how is and you wrote it originally in 2020, is that right?
Yeah. Wow. And I say that I was writing it in 2018. It took me a while, but it was published in 2020.
And how has it been received?
Oh, really good, actually. Here it is. Most people can't see this because they're listening online, but I'm really proud of it. It was happened at a really good time. I was I kind of left a job at that time, and I was going through topical steroid withdrawal, which is a whole nother subject. So I was looking for something I could do, just to keep myself going. And I just spent like an hour a day sometimes writing it, and it became therapy for me. If you've ever had to dig deep and write about your own experiences when it's something that's really been very hard at times. And I actually learned from writing it. When I was writing it, I was thinking, I'm really doing this badly. I've got to deal with this a lot better, because I've had panic attacks and anxiety, and it's really hard. I've had therapy, and with a lot of therapy, you can realize, like with panic attacks, most of the time or quite often, they're not going to hurt you. You're safe. You're going to get through this if you just wait. But with allergies, that never goes. That fear of anaphylaxis will never go.
Because you don't have any idea.
I can't take the allergy away. I'm always going to have it. So all of the therapies get so far, but you cannot ever, unless someone finds a cure.
Right.
And so that fear is always there, and it comes back and it gets triggered at different times, and it's very difficult. So yeah, it's a labor of love.
Well, good. Congratulations on that. Okay, so let's talk about, you also said you carry your epinephrine. That's part of your armor. So let's talk about that. And I know we just before we got on the show, it was like, do you carry 2 pens?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And how many do you have with you, or not with you, but how many do you have in your possession currently? Just the 2, or do you have 4? Okay.
I have 2. They're quite hard to get. So I have 2. We run out of them quite frequently.
Really?
Yeah. And there's 2 different types. There's a Jext and pen, and I have a Jext, I think, at the moment.
Okay.
So yes, some people do have more, like particularly if it's children, they will have some at home and some at school.
Mm-hmm.
But they're hard to get because we we aren't making enough of them for whatever reason.
For whatever reason. And I know that you were telling me about a story, like at home in the UK, you pay what, $30 for it?
Yeah.
But you were in the States. Tell us about that story.
Oh yeah, this was about 4 years ago, and I had an allergic reaction. It was very scary. I ended up unconscious in A&E in America, and I have to say the service I got there was amazing. They really looked after me, and they really knew what to do. They were really quick. Luckily, I was very close. I was in Palm Springs, and I was very close to a hospital at the time. Okay. So they were there within less than 10 minutes. Yeah, so I had to get the flight back, and they'd said to me, they initially weren't going to let me fly.
Oh, wow.
Because I didn't have the adrenaline. And I was like, oh, I'm going to get it when I go home. And they were like, no, you can't get on the flight without this. So I went to the chemist, and they wanted like $400 from me. And I walked out. I was like, I don't have $400. And I was with a friend, and she said, you've got to get it, and then maybe you can claim it back. And I was able to claim it, but through insurance. But yeah, $400. How does anyone in America afford that? I know you have insurance, don't you? But
well, and sometimes it pays for it and sometimes it doesn't. And especially if you're a kid and you need it in all those places, and maybe your parents are separated, you could need six of them.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And at $300 a pop, that's expensive. Yeah.
And when you have co-parenting, I know people where they have some with dads, some at dad's house, some at mum's house. Yeah. Some at school. Potentially they could need 8 of them.
And once you use them, you can't use them again, and they also expire.
Yeah, quite quickly.
Yeah. So it's an annual renewal of that. Yeah. And so that's mind-boggling and I've actually bought some of mine in Canada before, because you can just walk up to the pharmacist and say, I need epinephrine. And here in the US, you need a prescription for it. But in Canada, I was like, okay. And I think it was $100 a pen versus $300. I'm like, okay, how do I drive to Canada? But yeah,
it's crazy that it's so different, because I know they don't cost that much to make.
Right.
They're the tops £50 to make. It's plastic with some drugs inside and a needle. And I know there's some technical stuff going on there, and it's been designed, and they need to make money. But it seems like somebody in America is making a hell of a lot of money.
That is a whole nother heated conversation.
I do think we really need to look at these things, because they are huge, and I think that's why a lot of young people don't carry them. If you have to carry 2, like guys don't even carry bags a lot of the time, and girls don't want to have a massive bag. I'm one of those ladies with a big bag, so it's fine. But can we redesign those and make them smaller?
Exactly. And I'm gonna do I have one down here? Do you have yours there?
I think they're all
okay.
I used to. They're all in the house, because I've just done this talk. I've got a load of trainer pens, but they're still in my suitcase.
Yeah, my trainer pen is somewhere around here. I don't know.
I should have brought it.
But yeah, it does get large. The Avicue that we have now as well is probably about the size of this little bag, right?
Yeah,
and it's square. And I love it because it talks to you. as well when you're administering it. So if somebody's not familiar with it, that actually talks to you. But so what especially coming from the event that you spoke at, what are ways that you think we can make change that makes more safe and inclusive experiences?
There's loads of things, I think. I would love restaurants to look at their menu and try and make some of them just naturally inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
And that shouldn't be so hard to do. Because quite often you look at the menu and there is like one thing that's okay and everything needs modifying and things taken off, and it just makes it really hard. I don't think other diners would particularly mind either. There's a lot of people looking for healthier choices that don't have creamy sauces and nuts and wheat. There's also a huge thing around training here. Mm-hmm. People get training, but the lowest level is like a hygiene level 2. Okay. If you work in food service, you have to have done that. I don't know what it is over Europe and America, but I've done that training, and it's online, like click button, select like a multiple choice course. Mm-hmm. And it's really not that, it's not enough detail. There's a tiny section of it about allergens.
Same here.
And it's really it's not enough. So I know there are also companies here that do proper training, but only companies that really like go out and look for that and get it will have the extra understanding. And I just don't think that the training is good enough. I think the training needs to be better. Mm-hmm. And I think also there's a huge conversation around communication and engaging with people. We were chatting about this before we came online, weren't we? Like, we need to be talking more. We need to be finding out exactly what the customer's issue is, what their food situation is. Is it anaphylaxis? Is it life-threatening? Is it celiac disease? Is it an intolerance? Is it?
And how is it triggered? You know, is it, I can't be in the room with that, right? Or I can't touch it, or I can't eat it, right? Yeah.
Like one of the things I do is ask my fellow diners not to have my allergen, because I can probably be okay with that, but I just feel like if no one else is having any of my allergens at all, there's less likely chance of me getting the wrong meal or cross-contamination that way, particularly if I'm with a partner. I'm single at the moment, but if I'm with somebody that I may be kissing later, I definitely don't want them to eat my allergens, because that has caused me to have an anaphylactic reaction before as well, kissing someone who's just eaten nuts. Mm-hmm. So communication is huge, just kind of breaking down those barriers of like embarrassment and fear from the customer, because we've all been made to feel like awkward, fussy. Some people are too shy, particularly young adults, and they are statistically the most at risk because they don't carry their adrenaline a lot of the time. They don't even say. I know loads of people, not just kids either, that will look at the menu and think, I think that's okay. I'm pretty sure. And they'll be assuming, how can you, like we were talking about guacamole, how can you possibly get wheat into guacamole, or how can you possibly get nuts into ham, egg and chips? But, there could be a real high cross-contamination risk that you don't know about. And if you don't tell the chef or the servers, they're not going to find out. And I know I see a lot listening problems, and that's a training issue as well, where I say I have a nut and a wheat allergy that are really serious, and I'm also allergic to wheat and soya. And they go, oh yeah, okay. And they come back with a vegan menu for me, and you think, I didn't say I was vegan. Right. A little bit, but vegan isn't necessarily free from dairy and egg. It might be, but it isn't as strict here. In England, it's vegan is like, we've made our best effort for this, but there could well be traces. So
it's like that restaurant there, that the woman who went in to a vegan restaurant because she was allergic to milk and had an anaphylactic reaction.
Yeah, it's not safe, really. It could be, but the rules there are that vegan restaurant hasn't done anything wrong. I'm sure vegans would be annoyed about that, though, to be honest.
Right, yeah.
There's not milk in there, but it can be there. They just have to try their best, and it doesn't really matter if they get it wrong. But there shouldn't be milk in a vegan restaurant, should there?
No, not at all. And yesterday, or late last night, which I think it posted early morning here in the UK and here, is that, because yesterday was Meatless Monday. And so if you think about it, 4 of the top allergens can be eliminated if you are vegan, which is the fish, shellfish, milk, and eggs. But that still leaves 5 allergens that are used in vegan cooking all the time.
Yeah.
Which is wheat and soy and tree nuts and peanuts and sesame.
Mm.
Yeah. So you can still have lots of allergic reactions.
And they're not necessarily thinking about allergies. They're just cooking normally with certain things not in their kitchen. So I would going for vegan options isn't always the safe thing to do. Yeah,
exactly. Well, I think I cut you off. So you said more training, better communication. What were the other ones? What are some other things that you would like to see done?
Listening skills. So yeah, like when you say one thing, the waiter hears another thing, and they don't always understand what's going on. Processes, I guess, is the other one, where they need to have processes in place that kind of help their staff, because it is really complicated. There are so many like elements or areas where things could go wrong in the meal, and if the processes aren't there, like what happens when there's allergic diner? Is it in the diary? How do they note that down? How do they communicate to the kitchen staff? How do they manage that meal? How do they get it back to the right person? It's not as simple as it sounds.
No, not at all. And it does take a lot of different change, and whether it's a button on your register or on your your order system, things like that, to note it. But it brings me back to a story that I think it was last summer. I went to eat at a restaurant at the beach, and you can get 90% of their menu is done gluten-free because they have somebody in their family that is celiac. And so they have a dedicated fryer, and the staff is very well trained on it. And the expediter who is bringing the food from the kitchen to our table brought my mom and dad's food, but then looked at me and she said, "I'm so sorry, but we did not make your fried shrimp gluten-free. So we're making a new batch for you and it'll be out in a minute." And I love that because they caught it before they even brought it to me.
Yeah.
And
that's
then
near miss.
Yeah. And then when they deliver it, they're like, "Here's the gluten-free steamed shrimp."
Yeah.
Right. So I love that's part of their process.
Yeah, and I've seen things they do here, like there's a restaurant which has different shape for the people with the allergy, like different shape pizza. So I think it's a square pizza rather than a round pizza. Or
that's cool.
They put a little flag. So there's a place called Bill's where they stick a little flag in for you if you've got the allergy meal. So that's something they obviously do in the kitchen, and then that follows through to me, and I then know I've got the right one. So there's things they can do.
Yeah. And I've seen different plates and different color plates too. Like instead of a round plate, it's a square plate and it's blue, or, so that
sticker on the plate. I've seen a sticker on the plate. Because here, I think the law is they have to have they have to tell me, like the customer, verbally, but we don't have to have it in writing. And I feel like that's not enough, because it helps the staff if it's in writing. Like if the staff can see what the processes are and what allergens are in a dish in writing, it's far more likely they're going to be able to be knowledgeable to explain things to the customer and to get it right as well. And if it's written down, they can then show you. Whereas if it's verbal, it's like it's just a bit fraught with.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I know I've told this story before, but I had a drink off of a catering buffet, and my throat started getting scratchy, and I reread the label. I drank some more. I read the label because I'm like, it doesn't say it has pineapple in it. And then the server had gone into the back of the house, and she pulled out a piece of paper from her pocket and wrote down what she saw the chef making. And apparently that hotel had 2 different recipes with the same name, and they had different ingredients in each one. And they changed chefs in the middle of shift or something, and they changed what was getting put out on the kitchen. I'm like, and that's a process that needs to be fixed, right?
Yeah. And it does. I mean, it does make me think. Sometimes people have said to me, "Why on earth do you eat out? It's not safe. You should stay at home." Sometimes that's said a bit unkindly, but sometimes people genuinely are amazed that I even do eat out. And they're like, "How do you do it? How do you even get up the trust to do it?" And it is really scary. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I will think, right, my anxiety is high. I'm going to keep myself safe, and we'll have social gatherings at home where I can make sure I'm safe, or we'll have picnics. But you miss out on so much our lives are built around food and celebrating at weddings, at parties, for birthdays, and you're missing out if you're not allowed to go. So I do feel like not everywhere is going to be able to. And I think it's perfectly okay for a restaurant to look at their processes and their menu and be like, it really isn't safe. We're not ready to we don't know how to make it safe for you at this time. Because there's loads of places that will and can, but we need to know which ones are safe. And I think there's a lot of scope for rewriting menus, just maybe having a couple more options that are safe.
Right.
But I don't know. I don't know how hard it is to plan menus and run a kitchen, but they seem to be obsessed with butter on everything and milk on everything, don't they?
They do. They really do. It's like, or cheese, like you've got to have it on. Like, no, you don't. Right. But it is. And I like the fact that you said that it is okay to say that, but I also don't want them to use that as an excuse not to try.
Yeah. Because that's sometimes what happens, I think.
And I know I've been saying this, Cherny, from Certistar, or Shandy Chernow from Certistar has a stat on her website that says 38% of food allergic diners' bill is 38% less. Yeah, 38%. No, that is food allergic diners' bill is 38% less than the typical diner. I mean, that to me is a huge opportunity, because you said it earlier, you're buying something simple that you know that can't get contaminated.
And I can't have the pudding, and I often can't have, like the other day, I couldn't even have a hot drink because they hadn't no ingredients for the latte, and the coffee machine was one that was not safe because it was like one of these machines. They couldn't really make one outside. They couldn't really boil the kettle and make me one. It was all dripping milk through the same tubes. So it was like they couldn't eat, and that's where they make the money, on the coffees, on the puddings, and the starters. Yeah. So they are really missing out on revenue, because I, as an allergic diner, I'm a bit different because I will blog about it. So I will give you a blog. I will put you on TripAdvisor. I will put you on. We have a company in England that is just for allergy dining out with allergies. I will review it on Allergy Companions. I will put it on my Instagram. I will put it on my Facebook. I will tell everyone this place was amazing. Look what I had. That's gold as well, to get that. Get that kind of engagement, because even people without allergies will see that and think that's really cool. That's great. I'll try that place.
Right, exactly. And I'm about to look up and see that restaurant, that the hotel. Oh, perfect. It popped up right away. Let's see. Oops. The Aldrich. Have you eaten there? Yes.
It's absolutely amazing. That is probably my favorite restaurant ever.
Really?
He's amazing, that guy. Dominic Teague runs that restaurant, and I know him well now. We've been on panels together, and we've spoken about allergies together. His restaurant, about, I don't know how long, quite a long time ago now, he decided to go gluten-free and dairy-free, and he didn't tell anyone. And the reason he did that was because he had so many people asking for more, like, I've got celiac disease, I need it wheat-free, I need it dairy-free. And he had loads of other allergies as well, but those were the key ones that were happening regularly. And he sometimes 5 people in a booking of 10 would need that something different on their meal. And it's in London, where it's quite busy. It's part of a hotel. So he did that. Nobody knew. And then when he announced it, all of these people who'd been reviewing it, like restaurant critics and other restaurants, were like, no, that's not true. We've eaten there. There's definitely, that bread isn't gluten-free. He's such a good cook, and he's got it really down to the bread is amazing. You would not know.
Really?
And so it was a big hoo-ha here. Like, people didn't really believe him, but now he, it's just part of what he does. Everything is gluten-free and dairy-free. You can have milk in your tea and coffee at the end, but that's it. There's milk sealed in jugs for that. But if he can do it, other people can do it.
Exactly. And I love and I use him as an example all the time, because let me see if I can find this stat
good
over
food.
Here.
And like you said about that place that did you an 8-course meal.
Right. Yes.
I can choose from loads of stuff, and I can eat things I've not eaten before. And that's quite rare for me. I will often have ham, egg and chips, or I will have steak and salad. I will stick to really safe things that I know. Quite often it's a salad with a dressing on the side.
Right.
And I'm cool with that. I just want to be there with my friends. I want to be part of that eating out experience. And I don't mind not having pudding, not having a starter. paying £20 for a meal that's got half of it missing. I don't really mind as long as you keep me safe. But if you make me happy, if you make a little bit of effort for me,
you're gonna tell everybody. Yeah.
A raving fan. Yeah. And all my family love it and my friends love it. And people go there because they've heard how much I like it and they don't even have allergies.
Well, and the stats that I chatted with him, he was on the podcast last year, is that he increased his sales by 25% in 3 months. And then his employee satisfaction increased by 89% because his employees were happier and it made it easier for them to talk to their customers about what was on the menu. I just mind blowing. Yeah.
Twist that round, because if you don't have a process in place, if it's not easy, you have customers asking you for things every night that you're not confident about, that you can't do. Do you know what I mean? You're disappointing that customer probably by saying, oh, there's no starter. Oh, you can't have this. Right. Oh, I'll have to go and check because they don't know. It does. I can see. I hadn't realized it would make such an impact on the staff as well.
Yeah.
And the staff are lovely.
Well, that's good. That's good. Okay. Well, gosh, we could talk about this forever.
Oh, we could.
We could. So everybody, this is Ruth Holroyd. She is the author of The Essential Guide. Show your book while I'm talking about it. The Essential Guide and Action Plan for Living with Life-Threatening Food Allergies and Anaphylaxis. That's awesome. You can get it from her on Amazon. We got to figure out why the US couldn't get it on Kindle.
It should be on there. It should be all over the country.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, check that out because I had a hard time. But I do have a copy of it, so I'm excited. Yeah. And I like it because you've got like the psychological impact, and I'm actually talking to Lisa on Friday about the psychosocial impact of food allergies, the severity of anaphylaxis. How do you know if you're actually having an anaphylactic reaction? Because that's crazy in and of itself. How to getting a diagnosis, your action plan, how to use your EpiPen or your adrenaline, surviving day to day, staying safe at home and at work, which is important. And Lisa's talking about that all week too. Eating out in the holidays, dating, which you talked about, kissing. And actually my nephew's former girlfriend was anaphylactic to peanuts, and her mom had a conversation with my nephew when they started dating so that he knew. And so
it's a really tough one. It's great for weeding out people who aren't interested because it puts off a lot of people. I really big it up. I'm like, if I'm not really sure about somebody, I tell people quite early on, and it people get put off. They're like, oh, she's going to be no fun.
I think you're a fun person. It doesn't matter.
People are really just like, oh, that means traveling's hard. Oh, that means we can't go for an Indian restaurant. They're just like, oh, can't be asked then. It just shows they're not into you, and that's fine. Not everyone's going to be into you.
Yeah. Well, yesterday, Kristen, she started dating her husband, and she found out he had a fish allergy, and learned all about that through that process. But then she also has 3 kids that have food allergies.
Yeah.
So she's the only one without any allergies, and I think that's right. But anyways, so children, the legal situations, I mean, your book is loaded with all kinds of great information for people to get and understand. And I think it's important, as you were talking to restaurateurs, as much as the person who has food allergies, right? We have to come together.
Yeah. And that's reminds me of one of the main reasons why I wrote it was because there was nothing like that for me. Mm-hmm. There are books about allergies, but anaphylaxis is the higher end of it, and living with it can be absolutely terrifying when you get a 20-minute consultation and are told,
right,
bye. And I can remember when I was first diagnosed, we didn't even have Google. That's how old Google is quite new. And I remember when it first came out and the anaphylaxis campaign was first launched, and I was about 19, and that was launched when somebody died of an anaphylactic reaction, and I'd seen it in the daily newspaper, and I thought, is that what I've got? And that's quite terrifying. Suddenly be like, could this kill me? No one told me that. It's terrifying.
Really?
I grew up like this dawned on me when I was in my late teens, early 20s. This could kill me, and I'd never realized that.
That's something that your doctor should tell you.
No, they didn't really didn't really know. They didn't really tell me it was anaphylaxis. Back then it was like, it's an allergy, just don't eat it. Didn't tell you it was life-threatening, and it wasn't maybe well understood.
And you actually had one in a restaurant, right? An anaphylaxis
reactions, yeah, in a restaurant. That was about 3 years ago now, and it was a bit like everything went wrong. They actually got sued because they just had no process in place. I went in, I spoke to the owner, the manager, and he had written it down and slipped it behind the till. I think that's what happened. So he knew that what I wanted, he was going to do me something different, but it wasn't in the diary. The staff didn't know. The chef was not pre-warned. And then the staff just didn't have any training, so they didn't know what to do. They didn't know how to handle it. They lied to me. They told me something was safe when it wasn't 3 times. They then hid. They were like, wow. Oh my God, she's having an anaphylactic reaction. We don't know what to do, guys, quick. Like, lock the doors. And they just panicked. It was an absolute nightmare. And trading.
Wait a minute. They locked the door? What, the front door?
They locked the kitchen. Like this, my colleagues were like my boss wanted to get to the bottom of it. And she was like, what did you give her? We need to know. And they would like, no, we can't speak to you. It was awful.
Holy moly.
My boss is quite a strong character, and she went to them and said, you phone an ambulance now. They weren't going to, and they only did that because she was like, you need to phone an ambulance now. This is really serious. She is going into anaphylaxis. And they were really quick. They came and took me off. But I was the worst I've ever been because it had dairy in it, and they lied to me and told me that it was dairy free. I don't know.
Wow.
It was just a disaster from start to finish, and they were fined £24,000, which is a lot of money. And they really used them as an example. I think I did feel a bit sorry for the restaurant, but really they had nothing in place. Like, if that manager wasn't there, nobody knew what was going on, and that's not good for anyone. Those staff have to live with that. That chef has to live with that. And I don't think all the blame goes onto them. They didn't have training. They didn't know what to do.
Wow.
So yeah, it was really good. I got to go to court.
Yeah.
Into the whole thing, which was kind of baffling. Lots of legal jargon, and I got to read out my witness statement, and yeah, it was a really interesting experience.
Wow. And I'm hoping that helps change, and foster change within the legal system as well, because,
yeah, I hope so. I hope so.
Well, I'm so glad that you're here to talk to us about it and tell us about it, because we can't learn, without seeing what the results are. And I kind of say to people, I'm like, so you can change. I want somebody to go into anaphylaxis so you can see what happens, but I really don't. I don't want it for the person, but in some respects it has to happen.
It does, even with our families. Like, I hate to say it, guys, but my family have continued to make mistakes sometimes because they didn't really get it. And they only really get it when things get really bad.
Right.
Oh, really? Not even a tiny bit of butter? No, none at all. It's really hard. My family are amazing now. That was my mother-in-law, who took a while to get it. And she made me poorly quite a few times.
Wow.
She didn't understand. But when she did understand, she was great. But it's sad that we don't have that understanding, and that people don't just take what you're saying and be like, okay, let's make it safe for you. It can be really difficult because people just still aren't aware. I'm shocked that restaurants don't know how important anaphylaxis is, and we hear it in the news a lot now. It's reported quite widely here, and yet a lot of restaurants still use ignorance as their defense.
Right. Exactly.
Inexcusable.
Okay, so to wrap this conversation up, can you tell the audience what a safe, sustainable, and inclusive food and beverage experience would be for you, or means to you? Yeah.
I would like to, I'm always researching it, I'm always booking it myself. So I would like to be able to find out quickly on your website whether you can cater for me. I'd love to see an allergy menu on your website so I can see what's good and what's bad. And I would love that to be easily and clearly marked. I would love it if everyone is asked when you go in, like, does anyone have allergies? I like having a dedicated server so that I can know that I'm speaking to the same person. And just to be respected, really. We're human beings, and sometimes we get treated quite disdainfully. So be nice, be kind. We're really scared. Quite a lot of us, if we have anaphylaxis, are really scared to put our trust in you. And yeah, if you can offer me something that's not a fruit salad, I'll be really pleased.
And you'll come back.
Yeah, I'll come back again and again and again. There's places that I go back to regularly, and yeah, you could get lots more business.
Right. Okay. Well, Ruth, thank you so much for being with us today on the Eating at a Meeting podcast. I'm so glad you started blogging 13 years ago for yourself and now helping others. So it's really much appreciated. So as I put it up here earlier, I'm going to say you can find Ruth at whatallergy.com. Again, she's in the UK, but her knowledge is universal. So
no, my readership is more than 50% America.
Really?
Yeah, I was looking at that the other day. Someone I was wanting to pitching for some work, and they asked me what my stats were, and I was like, oh, okay, 60% of my readers are in America. So there you go.
Okay, well, very good. Well, everybody go check her out. And you can find her on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter at What Allergy. So pretty easy to find. But definitely stay in touch with her and continue to do what you do. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much as well for this opportunity and for doing this. Like, I'm looking forward to the psychological one particularly, but I'm really watching the other sessions. So thank you.
You're welcome. And I am so happy. So tomorrow, as Ruth said, tomorrow we're talking with Amanda about the alpha-gal or the meat allergy, which is growing very fast. And on Thursday, we've got two of your colleagues in the UK, Caroline and Jackie, talking about how to not be so scared about serving people with food allergies. What are those processes you can? Friday is Lisa, and we're talking about the psychosocial impact. And Saturday, we've got Kyle Dine with Equal Eats to talk about what does equal eating mean, right? How do we want to be? What does that mean? And then how to use his cards. So everybody, thank you for tuning in. This is the Eating at a Meeting podcast. And until the next time, tomorrow at 12 o'clock, stay safe and eat well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ruth.